Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Work Trends with Megan M. Biro. Whether you're here to network, learn, or share, we want you to have fun. During this live broadcast and Twitter chat, we'll discuss the future of work with smart and entertaining guests who value today's business and its impact on the world of work for the future. Stay tuned, because we start in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody, it's Megan M. Biro here. Happy summer. Oh, my God. I'm at the home office here in Cambridge, and it's like 75 degrees and sunny, no humidity. Coming off of a fun Memorial Day weekend here in Cambridge. I was home. I was just telling my guest over in the green room that we had here, I mean, there's something about global warming, right, everybody? Saturday it was like literally 100 degrees and humid out of nowhere. And then Sunday, I don't know if anyone out there who's listening is here locally in Boston or this area, but it was like 60 degrees. I was like, whoa, 40-degree weather shift. Happy summer. But today it's kind of leveled off. And I'm excited to be here as usual. Thanks for joining us. I want to give a special thank you to all of our friends and sponsors out there and our community members. You know what we're talking about today? We're talking about employees building a personal brand. That's I thought this was going to be a dead topic 4 years ago, but here we are, everybody. We're still talking about it. Employees are building personal brands that may just be attracting other employers, if you know what I mean. And that's okay. We're here to kind of discuss that today. There can be some awkwardness in that. Our guest today is Roger Panetta, and his organization, Nimble at Work, builds careers, workplaces, and businesses using performance and positioning. So I'm really interested to hear his take on this. I mean, I'm a big fan of people standing out, you know, whether you're blogging or using social media or other venues. You know, certainly writing is one key way to share your own voice. It's something I've done over the years and have had a lot of fun doing it, and I've met so many people out there in the socials. Many of you are my dear friends after knowing you for many years. And, you know, that's how we connected, right? Through content and Twitter and networking and all that fun stuff. But, you know, it's a great way to share your own voice. So I want to learn a little bit more from Roger today about how to be nimble in the workplace, meaning you're kind of getting there, you're performing, and you're empowering other people maybe to even do the same. Roger had a recent blog post up on talentculture.com where he refers to an article I had written in March titled 5 Reasons Why Social Media Should Be on Your HR Radar. And I think he and I both agree with each other wholeheartedly. Social should absolutely by now be on everybody's radar, and clearly it's in the workplace, right? But as an employer, I know your goals shouldn't be to stifle personal branding, I hope, but instead keep up with the times and keep up with what people are doing right now. So here's a little intel on today's guest. And if you're out there using Work Trends as a hashtag, hello, thank you for being here. Roger's already been out there on the Twitter saying hi to everybody. And he is the principal and founder of Nimble at Work. He has over 20 years of experience working with people, teams, and businesses to advance their careers in workplaces. He's got an MBA from the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business and an MA in International Commerce from the George Mason University School of Public Policy. He's got some additional credentials in business consulting and coaching. So, welcome, Roger.
Oh, thank you, Megan. It's great to be on the show.
Awesome. Well, tell us what moved you to take such a strong interest in the topic of personal branding. What kind of led Roger here? Tell us just a little bit more about where you live and work today and what you're up to.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. Well, actually, just a little bit about my personal life. I'm from Arlington, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and we're also enjoying some nice weather today, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I am married, and
it's not like totally hot there. You're not like sweating
not
bullets
bad.
just yet.
Yeah, it's not a Washington summer quite yet, so we're still pretty good on that. But just on a couple of personal things. I'm married. I have a child, and the question on branding is very interesting how I kind of came about that, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about Nimble at Work also and how it relates to that. In a lot of my work, I was doing really three things. I was doing what I call focused productivity, clear positioning, and great performance, and helping people really zero in and focus and really pay attention and really clarify what they were doing in those three areas. And I actually wrote a grid one day where I sat down and I thought about all the clients I had and a lot of the managers I spoke with and employees and executives over the years, and I thought about where people fell into a certain kind of category. And where they felt was where they were falling was in a couple of places. Number one, I was looking at both their performance and their positioning. And what I was looking at was I was thinking, okay, so we have people in four quadrants. That's how I did this. I said, all right, we kind of have people that are kind of the high positioners is what I call them, and these are the high productivity, high performance people. These are the superstars. These are the people that kind of do everything. These are the people that are just incredibly good at kind of getting their name out there, very, very good at branding and positioning and things like that, but also they do great work at the same point. Then there was a group of people out there that were unfortunately in the low end of both of these things, where they were not good performers, they were not good positioners, and these were kind of the people that often struggle in organizations and really in fact, in some organizations you hear about these people being kind of in the bottom 10%. So that was clear, and that really, there was nothing kind of unusual about those two categories. And that seemed
right.
Something that really didn't require a lot of thought, and that was clear. But then it got very interesting to me because I looked at the two other categories, and the two other categories I looked at people that were actually what I consider to be kind of low performers but high positioners. And this is actually where some of the stereotypes kind of come into play. These are the people that are kind of very good at kind of playing the system and playing the game, as they say. These are the people that they're kind of always accused of spending too much time maybe in the boss's office and things like that, but not really doing any work. And I was kind of very interested in those kinds of folks. But then you
mean people who are like suck-ups? You mean those kind of people?
That's exactly how they're doing it, and it's very interesting because when you talk to people,
let me just boil it down for you, Roger. That's what you mean, right?
The suck-ups, exactly right. And the funny thing about it was that when I talked to people across different industries about this kind of manifested itself in different ways. These are the people that often were these are people that always appeared in meetings a lot, even when they weren't invited. And these are the people that seem to be always doing a lot of training, which is really an interesting thing because of how training is kind of used in organizations today. They seem like these are the people that are always doing a lot of training, and they really were kind of making themselves somewhat visible, but really weren't accomplishing much of anything. And in fact, the joke probably at a lot of organizations was people would actually say, and maybe for all your listeners, it's the same thing. There's some people that you work with and you think, what exactly do they do here? And nobody really knows.
Yeah.
Including sometimes their bosses.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting category. But the last category, and this is what I was most interested in, were the people that were what I consider to be high performers but low positions. And these are the people that kind of live by the mantra of let your work speak for itself. These are the folks that were working very hard, really kind of grinding it out, but often being not recognized. And what I found over time was that these are people that they were passed over for promotions. A lot of times they had significant contributions to make to organizations. They were being overlooked in those contributions, or they weren't even being allowed to come to the table in some places and make those kind of contributions. So I thought, wow, these are the people that really need branding. And that's kind of what started it for me, was thinking about, well, what these people are lacking is some of that branding and some of that positioning work.
Well, we're now in 2016. Give us a little context on when this was for you. What year are we talking about when these revelations came to light?
I have to tell you that I don't have any. I wish I could tell you there's one aha moment, but I really don't. It's been over the last few years. It's been kind of an evolution of a lot of different things. I have a very funny story that goes back about maybe 10 years. I was actually working consulting in an organization. I remember talking to one of the managers, and it turned out that it was a company that was actually in the process of being acquired by another company. And of course, this can be a time of really a lot of stress for a lot of employees. But this manager was rather cavalier about this. I remember saying to me, oh, yeah, I'm not worried about this. I'm going to kind of keep my head down. I'm paraphrasing now. I'm going to kind of keep my head down and do my work. And if this will work out, and this is no problem, and these things happen. And, well, of course, what the story is that 6 months later, this manager ended up in a very different kind of situation, this company was somewhat compassionate about doing this merger. They didn't let everybody go right away, which was both good and bad in some respects. But this person kind of got put out the pasture, as they say. So I think that was just one story. The other thing is that I was very interested in kind of what was going on in both society and the workplace, and kind of the end of a lot of institutions. You know, the idea of the evolution of the kind of we used to have a model in our society and in our workplace that if you're obedient to us, we will give you security. And of course, we all know now. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't know this now. That this is completely gone. This has changed. But really, the institutions that are kind of coming in haven't really been fully formed yet. And that's where I started thinking, okay, this branding thing plays a role. This positioning plays a role. And that's when I kind of came to the idea about nimble. And I thought, this is what they need to do. They need to be more nimble. They need to be able to do this. And this is how the idea of Nimble at Work was born.
Very cool, by the way. I like the name, and it makes a lot of sense. So the long and short of it is you're still consulting. You're now consulting on steroids, sounds like, right? With lots of new ideas, a brand, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I think what I'm doing is a couple of things here. I'm helping both kind of individuals and teams and, of course, organizations, companies, and so forth. But what I'm really focused here is that I'm still kind of looking for high performers. I'm still looking for people, or at least getting people to that level of high performance. But I think, though, what's become different in the last 10 years in particular, the idea of now just having now great performance is not enough anymore. The positioning plays, I think, a major role, and that part of that, of course, is the element of branding. So I think bringing some of that in there, it's a lot more competitive in the marketplace. Social plays a big role, as we know. Your article pointed that out brilliantly about recruiters as a whole. And recruiters relying so much more on social media. So I was just finding that for a lot of people, that if they weren't out there, and if they weren't kind of spending some time on their brand, no matter how good the performance was, they were going to be overlooked.
Huge point. It's a nuance, but it's a biggie. So tell me this: what is a person's responsibility versus an employer's to advance his or her own career? Like where does that lie? Is it somewhere in between? Who's carrying that load?
I know that, and that's such an incredible question. It's so difficult to define right now. It's certainly still in transition and in flux, I think, to a large degree. Again, the model that we once had, we know that model has kind of is done. And I think that more and more as we're going to this idea of this kind of freelance economy, this gig economy, whatever you're going to call it, where people are not going to be as tied to these institutions anymore and even tied to employers, more and more I think it's going to kind of fall back on the employees to do this. On the other hand, I think that employers, if they want to remain competitive, and I think in the end what's going to happen is that there's still going to be a need for employers to do this. I still think there are going to be employees. I don't think we're going to ever go 100% to just a kind of a gig economy, because I think there's huge value in having people on a payroll. I think the complexity of work is not so easy just to kind of take people and kind of plug them in all the time at will. As your articles pointed out, it's very hard to recruit people. It's very hard to retain people. The war for talent is very real. So I think it's a lot of these things that are going to be over time. Where I think we're going to learn more and more about what's going to happen. I think we're going to figure out where does that responsibility lie. And I think that there has to be some kind of synergy here between the employer and employee on this. And I think there's going to have to be kind of almost a meeting of the minds, and particularly on the idea of kind of branding themselves. Now, I'm not advocating by any means that an employee should be free to write anything they want or say anything they want in any circumstance. I think there has to be some limits, there has to be some protocols. And plus, I would also advise anybody that's working for somebody in whatever capacity, I would tell them to certainly refrain from using social media as a way to kind of, air any grievances or take any kind of shots at their employees, which is amazing. There's been a couple of interesting cases about this.
It's amazing that's actually unfolding still, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that's supposed to be a communication device, right? But that's best in person. That's how actual, grievances and things take place through communication. Real human contact in real time,
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
I'm hearing from you. It sounds like it's a little equal but it's probably a little more leaning towards employees right now, just because, hey, there's more of them, right? There's more of them doing all this, building their brands, right?
Right. And I think it's almost like I look at this as almost has to be one of these things where there has to be kind of, an employee-employer kind of rights of declaration of how to handle social media and kind of branding and putting themselves out, a person putting themselves out there. I think at some level that the employer rather has a certain right to protect their intellectual property. They have a certain right to kind of protect some sensitive information. But I think the employees also have a right to kind of express themselves about what they're doing in their industry, and I think things like that. I mean, a lot of industries have things like compliance issues they have to come into play, so certainly that has to be kind of rolled into social media. My problem has been not so much that there's been restrictions placed by employers in terms of saying like, well, you can't write about our company, or you can't do this, or you've got to wait, or if we're working on a deal. My concern has been more that a lot of employers I've seen seem to be stonewalling the issue. So what happens in the employee then, for example, an employee wants to write on their own LinkedIn page. And by the way, I want to clarify too, I'm not talking about writing on a company page. I'm not talking about writing on a company vehicle by any means. I'm talking about this is an individual social media page. So some people, for example, to clarify, they want to get on LinkedIn and they want to go on their LinkedIn profile and they want to write a story about something going on in their industry, or they want to make a comment or something like that. And in this case, they've got to go to their employer and has to go through some kind of vetting process. And in some cases, employees have told me, and employers have actually said the same thing to me, by the way. They've said that this can take weeks and weeks and weeks. And in some cases, of course, the issue that's going to be written about is no longer relevant because it's passed by.
Well,
so I know.
I'm like, do you know how long 2 weeks is in social media time? It's an eternity.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where there's a disconnect. I agree with you. I think that, I think employers have to come to the reality that we're all unfolding our lives in real time, and I personally am going to probably, be on the side of the employee in this case going, you got to get with where we're at in real-time feedback and communication loops. You can't wait for legal to process something that you're excited about sharing with the world for 3 weeks. It's a culture downer, It just demotivates employees from behaving in a way that, makes them wanting to shout through the rooftops about how cool it is to work at that culture.
Exactly. And I think what you're saying is a great point. This can really be to the employer's advantage. This is what you want. You want highly engaged employees. We all know that. There's been so much research done in engagement in the last few years about how important it is to an organization. This is a way clearly to promote engagement with employees. It's clearly a way for them to intellectually grow, for them to understand their business, for them to express themselves. I think there's just so many advantages to the employer, and I think the idea of kind of hiding now behind some kind of stalling process is certainly not the way to go.
It's not even really realistic. It's beyond that. It's not possible,
It's
unless,
not realistic
you're in some highly, highly complex, quiet, secretive environment where it's like we're all under the radar. I mean, I don't even see that occurring as much. So, let me do this. Let me ask you, because I know you're talking a lot to employees and employers, and you've got some pretty cool case studies, I bet. Where do you see employees today in their quest to use social media for personal brand, and how is it specifically affecting their employers through some of these conversations you've been having? I mean, do you have examples?
Yeah, I do actually. I would say overall that one of the things I'm finding right now is that employers seem to be looking at employees' use of social media in a very defensive way. They're concerned about they seem to be concerned about two things. Number one, they're certainly concerned about the reputation of their company or their organization. Is my employee going to go out there and write something that's really, really negative and is that going to somehow affect us and hurt us in a negative way? The second piece, which they don't talk about as much, but clearly is out there, is that I think in this battle for talent, in this idea that, good people are always being heavily recruited, they're afraid that this is going to raise people's profiles. So they might have an employee that works in an organization that does a phenomenal job, and that person then starts to articulate, their knowledge in the industry and just their kind of thinking on things and stuff like that. They can be heavily recruited. And, of course, as we know, and again, your article states this, recruiters are just kind of they're buzzing all over social media, always looking for quality people. So I think it's a real concern.
Well, they're looking specifically for quality passive candidates, right? People who aren't really looking. There's a lot of listening involved, really. If you're a top recruiter right now on your game, you are looking for those passive people who are not actively looking to go anywhere. They're probably pretty content where they are. So that matters, the whole research side of the house, and, doing a good job for your communication portals becomes really kind of critical, for employees as well who want to brand themselves in a way that gives them a future, right, potentially at another employer.
Exactly. Exactly. There's another issue here too, and it's really the idea of that. And I getting I guess a lot of kind of idea of kind of free speech and stuff like that. But it's the idea that about employees being able to express themselves, and I think some of this can quite honestly be handled with something as simple as a disclosure, where if somebody writes something, they obviously have a disclosure at the bottom of the article or the video, whatever it is. That says, look, this does not necessarily reflect the views of my employer. This is my personal views. And I think there has to start being some acceptance of that by employers, that necessarily just because they work for you, that doesn't mean that if they're doing something on social media, they are expressing necessarily the views, unless they're in an official capacity, which is different.
Right. But even then, we want to see what the senior management team is doing on the weekends, maybe on Instagram, right? That's where the complexity comes in, too. I mean, let's not forget that people hire people retain people, right? We're all human. And I think the more you can show your human side, the more interested people are in general in getting to know you. It's just kind of a basic human nature issue, right?
It is a part
it's simple yet so complex still,
Right. It is such a part of the human condition to want to be able to express ourselves and kind of shout out for what we do. The big thing, though, too, is that employers, I think, are really missing it. To refer back to your earlier question, I think employers are really missing a huge opportunity here. This is a chance for them to really have really articulate people putting out to the world, which, of course, quite ironically, is actually going to help their recruiting, because this is a great way for them to be recognized. One of the things in your article that you actually stated was some interesting statistics, and one of the things you said about actually how employees themselves are looking at the brands of employers. So this branding idea works both ways. It's not necessarily just the brand. So this is really an opportunity here. It's just like really a missed opportunity. I think moving forward,
it's a missed opportunity. You and I, Roger, are on the same wavelength here. I agree. There are so many brands out here who are so concerned about safety and security that they're missing this whole other side of the equation, where it's like, why don't you just have some fun with it? Let go just a little bit and have faith that people are going to just, at the end of the day, hopefully do the right thing and have some sort of a communication loop that says, hey, these are kind of the general ballpark rules. What do you think? And have a conversation with your employees about it. That's possible. That's possible for a lot of brands out there. So, hey, there's something I think is kind of fascinating. Explain your correlation between the death of job security and the growth of personal branding on social. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen is that, again, when we had a very kind of secure or more secure world that we currently have, when we had very clearly defined institutions, career paths were just very, very kind of much clearer. You would join an organization, there were kind of always the stories about somebody joining the mailroom and then progressing up through the organization and things like that. But I think today
I'm like, wait a minute, does that even happen anymore, Roger? I feel like I hope that story doesn't go away, but I'm like, I feel like I hear less and less of that every week.
Well, I have to tell you that most of the organizations I talk to, when I find out about when I talk to them about their mailroom, most of them actually use outside contracting help now. So I don't think they even have any employees in some cases.
Right.
Yeah, working a lot of these. Yeah, exactly right. But I think it's just interesting, because I think what happens is that in a very competitive environment, and I think we are going to continue to be obviously very, very competitive as time moves forward. We have certainly, you can look at it opportunities or threats depending on what your point of view is. We certainly have globalization. It's going to always increase. We're going to have automation. I know there's a lot of kind of fear out there right now about the kind of rise of machines, what that's going to mean for the job market and for jobs in general and things like that. I think that what happens then is that if you're working in a job and you're not putting yourself out there, I think just doing the job in the future is not going to be enough. I think there's just a lot of competition out there.
Yeah,
and again,
me too.
some of it, and
yeah.
I think it's both in terms of your brand, and it's also in terms of how the mechanics of the job search and the recruitment process is working now too. The social media.
Right.
Again, if I can refer back to your article, just you've got to be out there now, otherwise you're going to be missed.
You're going to completely be overlooked, and that's a scary thing for a lot of people. So
very scary.
Here's a question for you. What advice do you have for people out there who feel their employers are stifling their personal voices? What can people do today that feel frustrated in that place?
Yeah, so I think some of that is that, I think at the most basic level is start with the employer and see if you can have some dialogue and see if you can kind of move them off their position just a little bit to see if they can become a little more open and you can move them forward. But I have to say, and I don't say this lightly, if at some point, if your employer is not kind of going to support you in that way, not going to support your growth, maybe they're not the right employer for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you need
well,
to go to a place.
that's the scary part. I hope employers out there are listening. That's the scary line we're walking now.
Yeah, because
missed
I will tell you
opportunities galore.
Right, and there are going to be enough smart. This is what I feel. I feel like there's going to be enough smart employers out there who are going to realize that this is a bonus. This is really a benefit to the brand of their company and just their performance and everything else. To have kind of highly engaged, highly articulate, really high level performers, and part of it, these are people that want to express themselves.
I'm going to say one thing. I think when I hear you say that, it makes me wonder about all the people out there, though, who are high performers, but they're more insular. They're shy. They don't want to really speak up. I mean, it brings me to the next question. Is standing out really for everyone? Is it for every single personality out there? Are there ways for shy people to make this work too?
I think so. I think so. First of all, I think the idea of standing out, I think, it certainly has gotten a lot of attention and been kind of heavily debated and articulated and kind of thrown around as to what's right. And the way I come down on this is that I think what ultimately is important here is that you've got to do what's kind of right for you, and you have to do kind of what's right for your industry. So in some industries, writing is, I think, extremely important. Articulating yourself through writing becomes really part of kind of getting your message out there and really kind of building some credibility outside of your own job. In other industries, it might be something else. So I've actually dealt with people in more creative industries, and for some of them, it means making videos. Now, certainly for a shy person,
yeah, I was going to say I've got plenty of
making a
friends.
video is overwhelming to them.
Yep. Yeah. Some people are really, really into it, and they do a wonderful job of storytelling through that medium. And some people do it on content and writing. There's not one medium for everybody.
No,
well,
I
Roger,
think
you certainly, yeah. I mean, I think there's a place for introverts here too, and I think we need to be sensitive to the fact that not everybody wants to stand out, whatever that means to them in their own context, in their own careers, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a nuance. It's a nuance, right?
Very much.
Man, we're down to 2 minutes. This just flew on by. You've been very interesting today. Thanks for sharing all these wisdom bombs. So,
thank you.
When are you going to be traveling next? And I'm sorry, by the way, I'm going to be speaking on the Blog Squad at SHRM in just a couple of weeks in D.C. So sorry, I'm going to miss you there. Where can people find you in the coming weeks, Roger? What's up?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, so you can find me at Nimble at Work. That's always a good place, and probably one of the best places to get me. If you want to send me an email, it's Roger@NimbleAtWork.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for being here today, and let's take this conversation over to Twitter and keep it alive. That's what it's all about.
Thanks so much,
communicating,
Megan. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.